Hi everyone, it's Eric from ecotman12.blogspot.com and welcome to my full review of the HTC One M8. Now a big thanks must go over to Vodafone who actually sent me this handset into review, and a link to their website will be in the video description, and there you can actually purchase the HTC One M8 on a contract plan. Now before I actually get into the actual software of the HTC One M8, let's first talk about the hardware. Now, I was a big fan of the hardware on the previous generation HTC One, and this one's no exception, but except they've just really sort of excelled in the build quality. Looks wise, I prefer last year's model, but feel in the hand or just general sort of like the aesthetics, I'm really impressed with what they've done here. As you see, you've got a really nice metal looking effect with this sort of brushed aluminium effect on this grey colour. And there's even a a silver colour, which if I was to get one, I would go for a silver colour, because that looks really much like the first HTC One, which I really did adore the design on that. You can also see there is a 4 megapixel ultra pixel camera right here, and there is a little sensor over there which is supposed to capture depth information for the photos. We'll get to that later. And we've got a duo for flash right over there, which is really good. HTC logo, and all around this is an extremely thin and very sleek handset. And one of the features which I really do adore is that you've now got a micro SD card slot, and you can expand the storage up to 128 gigabytes with that SD card slot, which is absolutely fantastic, especially when you add that storage space on top of the built-in 16 or 32 gigabyte variants you can get of this smartphone. So let's turn the phone on. I'm just going to say you've got a front-facing camera over there as well. And this is Sense 6. Not too much difference I've noticed with HTC Sense 6, although HTC are making their overlay much lighter as opposed to Samsung, who are just making it heavier and heavier on top of Android, which produces a lot of lag. HTC smartphones used to get lag, but the HTC One from last year and this M8 showed to us that HTC have pretty much dealt with their lag, as you don't really find it anywhere on their handsets anymore. It's running the latest version of Android 4.4, which is also known as KitKat. I'm pretty sure this is running 4.1 or something along those lines, but this is running KitKat, and as you can see, it's just super responsive. If I just go into, say, the Play Store, instantly just goes into it. If I go to Mail, instantly goes into it. Gmail, instantly goes into it. And if I pull down with two fingers, you'll notice I've got an extreme power option right here. And that's because the HTC One M8 does allow you to overclock the processor, and you find that in the developers options. But this will drain much more battery life, particularly when you're doing heavy intensive tasks like playing games. But for just social networking and doing the other sort of lighter associated tasks, then the extreme power will not really take that much extra battery from the smartphone. But I've just turned it off for this particular video. And if I just pop into stuff like Instagram, you'll see that applications run absolutely flawlessly on this device. As you can see, it's just extremely smooth. And if I go back to the home screen, you can see I've got a widget over here, and to add widgets in HTC Sense, you just pinch your fingers out, and then you can just scroll through all of these widgets, or you can search for them as well, and then you can drag and drop them onto an empty screen right here. As you can see, very easy to add. Then you can resize the widget as well. So all of this is extremely well done. There's some of the stuff missing from regular standard like vanilla Android, so you can't just fling your widgets into the trash can. What you're going to have to actually do is do what you did with the older versions of Android and just drag and drop it into remove. Now let's talk about the camera. Even though it sounds the same as last year's model, it is supposed to be more superior. You do lose the optical image stabilization, which does not really help for video, although video still does look very good. The photos look very good if you're taking photos indoors, but if you want to take the photos outdoors or do some macro shots, you will notice that this does lack in detail, and the contrast is very good, although I do think it could be a little bit higher. The photos are passable, but there is nothing at all that encourages me to pick this phone up and use this camera. Many other smartphones I've been testing, I'm just so encouraged to actually take their camera out and just take photos, specifically with, say, the Samsung Galaxy S smartphones and the Nokia Lumia 1020. That was a real big smartphone that I just wanted to use the camera every second I could. With this one, I keep forgetting it as a camera. It's because it doesn't even really have that much of a novelty on me, really. So I'd say for photo-wise, I'd say the photos aren't as good as last year's HTC One. Video-wise, this does capture better detail than the previous HTC One, but the previous HTC One did have optical image stabilization, whereas this one doesn't, so it's to each his own, really, as to which one you prefer. Now what we've also got is a depth sensor, which is above the 4 megapixel ultra pixel camera, and this allows you to actually shift the focus when you edit your photos, so it'll give it a very much a sort of DSLR-like effect. So that is extremely good for if you want to like just sort of like make your photos look that bit more creative. And you've got various other features as well, although they're not really the types that would even interest me, but they're there if you need it. Now let's talk about these right over here. These are the Boom Sound speakers, and these are absolutely fantastic. I don't think they're as good as last year's HTC One's Boom Sound speakers. These are certainly louder, but those ones actually had Beats technology integrated into them as well, and they really did help. As with the original HTC One, there was an option to turn the Beats by Dr. Dre sort of like option off, which I did, and then the sound sounded a bit more flat. So this does sound like the best sort of speakers out there compared to practically every other smartphone, but I still think the original HTC One is the master when it comes to sound, as that Beats audio really did take it that extra mile. That being said, like I said, these speakers are still fantastic and I've really enjoyed using them, particularly for media. They're great for gaming as well, but I don't game on my smartphones. And what else complements the speakers? The screen. This is a 1080p 5-inch screen running at a resolution of 1920 by 1080, which, as I said before, 1080p. And the colours really do pop on this screen. They really are fantastic. Seriously, I just can't fault the screen. I've been incredibly happy with it. The only one sort of little niggle I have with it is when you're outdoors. Outdoors the screen is visible, but it is quite a bit glossy and does reflect quite a bit more than I would have liked it to. It's still perfectly viewable, and the sounds and the speakers when you're outside is absolutely fantastic. It's like very, very loud. Even over a crowd of people, you can still hear the sound coming out of these, which is very impressive. But the screen is just a bit more glossy when you're outside, but that's a downside which is easily sort of like overcome by the good aspects, and that's what we're going to go into really right now. You've got a 5 megapixel front-facing camera, and that camera, I'm going to tell you, for selfies, not just selfies, but for standard photos, is just as good as the 4 megapixel rear-facing camera. I mean, this is the first time I've seen anyone attempt a 5 megapixel shooter on a front-facing camera, but the camera on the front for general photos, even low light, normally any front-facing camera you use for low light will start picking up loads of pixels and sort of like dark areas, and everything will be muddy on the photo. Any of the dark areas here, you don't see any pixelation. Fantastic front-facing camera, and this is the best front-facing camera. So, how does gaming perform on this? Well, you already seen that I've told you with day-to-day tasks this performs absolutely fine, but for gaming, I was surprised at how well this performed. You can see that I've done a previous gaming performance test video using playing games like Dead Trigger 2 and The Amazing Spider-Man, and pretty much every single game ran flawlessly at 60 frames per second, even Asphalt. And I was really surprised with Spider-Man, because everyone knows that's the very interesting game I test on all smartphones, and every single smartphone runs it with lag, with the exception of just a couple here and there. But now with the new processors that are inside here, the Snapdragon 801, the HTC One M8 runs that The Amazing Spider-Man absolutely perfectly. There is a little bit of lag here and there, but on the whole, it runs the game perfectly. And every game on this 1080p panel looks absolutely superb, and I really can't fault it. Could I recommend this phone? Well, everyone knows that last year's HTC One was the #1 best smartphone of the year in my top 5 smartphones video. This one has a very good chance of competing and being one of the best smartphones of 2014. However, it has not won me over fully as the last year's HTC One did. If I had to choose an Android smartphone today, this would be the one I'd go for. Everyone knows I still use a HTC Desire S, and I'm just waiting for that perfect moment where the smartphone sort of comes out, and I could just pick that one up. That's what I'm still waiting for, and if there is no interesting smartphone for the rest of this year, then I'm going to guarantee you I will pick up a HTC One 3 or whatever they call it, or the M9. But if I had to pick up a smartphone today, then yes, I would go with the HTC One M8 hands down. It is one of the fastest Android smartphones I've ever used in my life. I'm not a fan of the Sense overlay, but on the whole, it's not too obtrusive, and you can get a different launcher or install a custom ROM if you so wish, and then you can make it look like stock Android. But overall, this is just absolutely fantastic, super smooth, the smoothest smartphone I've ever used, and I can just highly recommend it to anyone who wants a good build quality, good performance, and all-round fantastic smartphone. Thanks very much for watching. This has been Eric from ecommon12.blogspot.com. Please thumbs up, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see all of you next time. Take care.